Whenever I come into church, I always note that there are more candles burning on the left-hand side of the church than the right-hand side of the church. And when I first arrived, I thought perhaps people gravitated towards the left as they walked in. This was before one-way systems and pandemics and so on. But I quickly began to realise that this was not the case. It was because of our two icons, those of St. Nicholas and of the Virgin Mary. She was the one who attracted most light, most candles. St. Mary has a resonance in our society and is also, of course, half of our slightly unusual church dedication. Unusual because it's not St. Mary, which is quite a common church dedication, but Our Lady. And that term of Our Lady and St. Nicholas survived both the Reformation and the Puritan era in a way which I haven't seen anywhere else in the Church of England. Well, this Sunday we will be keeping the feast of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and we'll think about what we know about her. There is, of course, the Bible, which we all know, and the stories about Mary in that. There aren't that many stories about her, but there they are, and they give a simple tale of some events surrounding her life. But as the centuries went on, more texts were gathered, and there are texts which didn't make it into the Bible, which we call the Apocryphal New Testament, which talk about Mary. These were written sometime later and have less authenticity. So, for example, the Gospel of Pseudo-Matthew talks about Mary and adds a few anecdotes to some of the stories which we know, such as the journey to Bethlehem, and a few extra stories are thrown in. Other texts talk about her as well. There is a Coptic text from many centuries after the time of Jesus, but attributed to Evodius of Rome, who was in the 1st century, which talks about the assumption that when Mary died, her body was assumed into heaven. Similarly, there is a Greek text which has a discourse of St. John the Divine on the falling asleep of the Holy Mother of God. Now that's rather interesting, partly because in the East, where Greek texts originated, the feast we're keeping on Sundays is known as the Dormition, the falling asleep of Mary, whereas the Assumption, which was always much more of a Western festival, is how the feast on Sunday is known in the Roman Catholic Church. Church of England goes that middle ground and just talks of the feast of the Blessed Virgin Mary. But that Greek text is also interesting because, although claiming to be from St. John the Divine in the 1st century, refers to the Holy Mother of God. But that title, Holy Mother of God, Theotokos in Greek, which means literally in English, the God-bearer, that title dates from the 4th century when it was adopted at the Council of Ephesus in 431. It was not so much about Mary as about the divinity of Jesus, and more importantly, that you could not divide the two natures of Christ, divine and human, as the contemporary heresy of Nestorianism maintained. And over the years, the cult of Mary got bigger, and we all know the growth of her presence in art and in devotion over the centuries. The Assumption of Mary, which in those early texts is talked about and was slowly adopted by the church, then was the subject of a rare statement with papal infallibility in the Roman Catholic Church in 1950. Really very recently, and then more recently, the term Co-Redemptrix has become more popular in the Catholic Church, in particular, someone who is redeeming us alongside Jesus. It's not got universal approbation, but it is a popular phrase. Well, that cult of Mary, whichever way we think of her, is very strong in our society. And I often wonder whether the cult of Mary honours women or suppresses them. It honours them because people say that Mary, in a male-dominated patriarchal world survives as a figurehead of the importance of women in our society. Or does the cult suppress women because it creates a diversion from real situations and perhaps makes her a bit of a mascot for the position of women whilst really ignoring them? Is it the femininity of Mary which is important, or is it in fact that an irrelevance used to define the Godhead in purely human terms? And yet the enduring popularity of Mary is because of her relatability and her femininity. saccharine hymns about Mary, there are many sung across the universal church throughout the world, refer to her often as our mother as well as Jesus' mother. And so maybe she's meeting a maternal need that we have to relate to someone like Mary, and so many people have that. I'm not dismissing any of these roles of Mary, but we do need to remind ourselves of two significant things about her when we go back to those original biblical texts which we read, not the apocryphal ones, but the ones which survive in the Bible which we read on Sunday. Firstly, she was the bearer of Jesus. That title, Theotokos, is very important. She was the bearer of Jesus, and she was specially chosen for the task. And each of us is also called to bring Jesus into the world which we inhabit. And the second significant thing about Mary is that she responded to that call. And her response is not one of obedience, but of agreement. Not, I'll do this because he told me, but I accept the challenge before me. Listen to the words of the prayer formulated around the words of the angel. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.